It's a novel way of kind of recapping the year. Uh, we met 15 times, guys. We did 15 different calls. So happy. We had some pop-ups. We're still experimenting with this whole model. And we'll continue experimenting with your guidance. Anyone has any input on how we can make this medium better, these calls better? We're all ears. It's all about engagement to me. And so we're driving towards trying to get something that's different in the industry is an actual open forum and to talk about these matters. But you guys put some time into this thing. I know some of you have made just about every call, so we really appreciate that. That's a lot of time. You give up a lot of time and you added tremendous value. But there's your Fitbit score on participation. And above this, of course, is AI in general, and we'll get to that in a minute. And AI is driving the Mobley thing, but the Mobley, I'm pretty proud, Frank, that we kind of not scooped it because it was out there. People were talking about it, but no, nobody was really talking about it last, like a year ago, October, September, August, when we were just thinking about launching this call. And it was one of the first things we addressed because we felt, and it's turned out to be properly so, that this was a bellwether landmark case in the relationship between AI and humans, and it's still ongoing. But this is the number one talked about news story this year, Frank.
But and all the others that trickle down after that that are in the same fashion, same area. I'm just glad we have been talking about Mobley versus Workday for a year, and how many others are related to that. We need some case law in this space, and I think that's pretty clear that Britt Marie even wants to address that as well. So I'm really glad she's been a great resource to have and to weigh in on this, and eager for people in this group, if you're hearing about other things, or even at some point Europe's going to step in here and put some policies to address it. And I like that they're putting some visibility on how some of these bots will work, and that's important to document it.
All right, so these are kind of the broadly defined news stories, kind of as we curate them. So you can challenge this, you can throw your own in there. This is definitely 100% open forum time now, and you guys want to weigh in on what your top stories were. We got a number of slides on this matter, so we're going to drill deeper and deeper. And you guys can weigh in. We've missed some things, certainly. We get obsessed with things like everyone else. We got obsessed with Mobley. I think that turned out to be a correct obsession, but we don't pretend to have all the answers. We don't pretend. We're busy like you guys are. This is a side hustle for us, and we're having fun with it. But if we've missed some stories, but number one, I mean, automation and robot takeover, and this is where we are. I mean, this is real, and there's a couple storylines here, but the overarching story is we are automating. We are automating, and I mean, I'm just going to comment right now. Did anyone see the Squawk Box interview with Benioff? I'm not sure if anyone saw Mark Benioff this week. I mean, he's planting a victory flag. He's basically saying, "I told you so." And it's interesting. It's troubling, interesting, fascinating, portends of the future, perhaps. But Benioff is basically saying Salesforce was one of the first to really commit and put their actions where their mouth was by laying off lots of people, diverting those resources to automation and AI, customer care, now sales. And he is reporting out to Wall Street that it's worked, that revenue is, and I'm troubled by it working, to be honest with you, Frank, because he's reporting all-time record quarterly sales, all-time record quarterly. I mean, it's a $50 billion company, right? Uh, All-time record profitability and all-time record customer sat scores. So I don't know whether to take that at face value, but Frank, I'd love to hear your comments or other people's comments on
Yeah,
that.
well, and I think the next piece, that we've gone through this big automation. A lot of organizations are ahead of it. Others are waiting to see what happens. They're trying to catch up or do their own piece of automation. Great that they're out front. The question next year is going to be, now what? What have you done for me lately? Because they can get to a point of, okay, we've put in all this automation. Now what are you doing? What are you providing? What strategy? What services? And so, another piece with picking on the Squawk Box part, Disney and OpenAI now have a relationship, and 200 characters, Disney characters, are going to be allowed by OpenAI for a multi-year agreement that OpenAI can use those. And even though Disney has thousands and thousands of characters, I mean, just Marvel alone probably has 5,000 characters, but they haven't said which 200 characters that OpenAI can use. But look at the creativity. What's going to happen? Is this going to really drive that creativity forward, doing something different than what Disney has been doing, historically? Yeah, okay, let's see what happens. And I think we're going to quickly get to a point of saying, now what? That we put in these automations, we put in improving, streamlining our businesses. Great. Now what? And we need to be
What
part of that on the TA side. We need to
and
be
Frank,
driving these two.
what for TA? What for us?
Yes.
And what does this mean now that we've had a year of this? It's unfolding right real time, right in front of us, around us. What does it mean for TA, for talent acquisition and human resources? I mean, are you guys thinking about this? Is this, obviously you are, but where do you guys think this goes? And I'd love to hear some thoughts on, because obviously this is as big a transition, a big a disruption as we've seen since the mid 90s with the internet in general. And
The first is we got to remember to stop paying attention to headlines. Mark Benioff has spent $1 billion in the last 20 years trying to convince you that he's the smartest guy on the planet. It was the whole social event. Every time he screws up, he comes up with a new social thing. He just got yelled at last month because he said it was okay for Trump to bring troops into San Francisco. And then magically there's a new thing that goes, maybe I'll call Salesforce Agent Force. So we got to be careful when we see what's going on, because it's like the announcement of an OpenAI job board. There's stuff going on that has nothing to do with us. So I wouldn't believe half the things that they're putting out. That's just smoke and mirrors for something else. But I mean, it is a challenge. Is AI doing anything, or is it exposing how much of work was fake from printed money? We still have over 20% of companies that are zombie companies that rolled over their debt year after year with lower interest rates that literally should not exist and eventually will be pushed out of the system. That's a long overhanging effect. Why would we assume it's AI when we haven't even dealt with the fact that we tripled the money supply from 2019 to 2022? So I'd be careful buying the news stuff. Instead, focus on, are we actually seeing any real changes internally?
So I can
Because
say
I'm not seeing it.
right.
I just I met a guy yesterday at a networking event for tech companies, and he had two other co-founders, and it was a blockchain, WW3 type company. They have a platform for their own coins, and they had 60 employees and grew to a substantial amount of revenue, and ended up automating all of it. And now that's just the three co-founders, and they're more profitable than they were prior. So there are some examples where it does happen, but I think it's largely overblown from what I've seen.
Well, I mean, Brent, that's a great assessment and observation. And I think that's on everyone's mind is, are we entering, and what does it mean to enter a phase of an employee-less enterprise? Is that what,
How is that any different than Robert Half hiring people and then letting them go after 2 years so they can move all the revenue underneath the
well,
district manager's
at
name?
least they hired people. They had hired people.
I mean, they had to hire people first to get there. Where are these companies that are scaling up to $1 billion without all of that in the beginning, or without some weird money? I just, because if it works, it would work. If it worked for one company, it would immediately work for 1,000 others. That's the thing they're missing. Do you guys remember Fireflies? You even use Fireflies, the AI note taker? Did you realize what they said the other day? The guy came out and said, when we launched it, it was total nonsense. It was me sitting on calls, writing notes, and sending it to people. That's fraud. His beta, his early investors, he admitted to clear fraud. So I'd be really careful believing much of that because I want to see it. Because the day it works, we're not having these discussions anymore. We're launching 4 or 5 companies on our own because it's easy to copy. That's why I'm not so sure that all this is happening the way they say it does.
Well, Jim, at the end of the day, there's got to be a consumer.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a consumer, even if it's an industrial platform or company, eventually turns into toothpaste or something like that someone has to buy, Campbell's soup. And if nobody's working, if there's nothing but employee-less enterprises, who's going to be buying the goods and services? I mean, Henry Ford is always on my mind, right? He raised doubled the salary of his line workers in 1905 or whatever the hell it was, so they could all buy Ford cars. That logic seems to have left the building. Like,
Well, if you listen to what they're saying too, it's kind of funny because Benioff says we made all these changes to Salesforce, but who are you going to sell those licenses to? And what's the answer? We're going to increase our price. So we're going to be so efficient, we're going to charge the same amount because we're going to charge more per license. How is that any different than Indeed telling us that they're going to charge us $1,000 per nurse instead of 100? That's an investor pitch. That's not reality. Is because you
Yeah.
do. If you cut off the number of people that sign up, this is why I don't believe the LinkedIn thing. I mean, the very idea, once people started looking into their LinkedIn contracts from the RPO side, we all cut them because we're like, holy crap, 50% of our people aren't even signing in. So sometimes when they make those assumptions, you look and you go, oh, you're right. I've been overpaying Salesforce for a decade. I don't have to do it anymore. Well, you need new leadership to come in because nobody wants to admit that. But a lot of people don't realize, Unilever once cut $100 million of spend out of the Google ads. Unilever, because it was all a waste. It was totally wasted.
Sure.
They saw no impact. So part of it is, hey, this is how we've done stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what actually occurs.
No, we'll see that whether it's VC or private equity firms or all, they're going to have to look at these businesses better versus saying, oh, three guys are in a garage and they have 50,000 in revenue, but let's give them 2 billion valuation. I think a lot of that is going to change. There's going to be a lot of calling BS on some of
how
that.
has this impacted your jobs? How has this impacted talent acquisition professionals' daily lives and HR professionals? That's what I'm most interested in the downstream impact on our own profession. And what do we do about it? I mean, obviously, we're going to adopt it. The notion that AI is something that we have to learn seems silly to me. It'd be like learning Word or, Google. It's ever present. AI is going to be there below the surface or at the surface level. It's the new UX. AI is the new UX, right? And so I don't know. The question is going to linger, but our job at TATL has to be always centered around what do we do about it? What is our input? What is our output?
And what knowledge can we teach as a community? What do we need to learn? What are some of the basics that we all need to have, or basic understanding that we can then go back and lead TA and drive this change at our organizations?
Right on. And one of the things essential to that we need to understand and own is the regulatory frameworks and the legal frameworks. That's part of the reason, Frank, I think got so enamored of Mobley early on, because we were entering whether it be the administration or the Wild West or whatever you call it, where there's going to be a very hands-off approach to automation and consolidation and the discriminatory practices that AI bots are inherently going to do, the same as humans that program them did. We need to have the framework. We need to have, Mobley land somewhere.
And I hope we've drilled home that point, David, that the TA leaders need to understand these contracts. In many cases, they're inheriting, Workday or SuccessFactors or Oracle or whatever HR tech system or stack is there, and they're not weighing in on these contracts and all that. They need to weigh in. They need to have ownership seat, because it's going to come back to bite them, as we've been discussing. And I think that's some of the learning we've been driving home. And I'm excited about it. I hope this team is able to go back to their organizations and share a bit of knowledge and be able to push leaders to say, here's why I need to be involved in these parts of the business.
I mean, we need to own this. When the meetings come up about risk and regulatory and legal and the CFO, risk mitigation, TA needs to, in my opinion, needs to own this topic, be the subject matter expert in the implications of AI automation on the workforce and potential downstream legal risks or exposures. And if you own that, then you're in the right. I've always been like preaching, get in the room, get in the right rooms, the real rooms, the seat at the table, at the right table, in the right rooms. And if you're an expert on this, as Mobley and Sirius and these other cases matriculate down through the process, and the exposure finally hits the CEO, if you're the expert in that on these topics within your enterprise, you're going to be handed the microphone, and you're going to have a lot of input in how the new workflows map to this stuff to protect the interests of the organization and their people. California's leading the
Disagree
way,
with you.
obviously. New York's
Uh,
coming on. This is going to be a news story, Frank, that's going to go on all of 2026 until Mobley lands and then or gets settled or whatever happens.
So, David, just a quick, it's when you say 2026 and 2026, can we have some direction on what we can bring a little bit more direction in the group of how we can address this rather than just picking up the topics and discussing and what as a group we can do to adapt and move on and stand against if this is not working. I mean, I'm personally finding a bit challenging of the output of this discussion is like, are we going to go back and say as a group we want to define how it impacts the industry? Is that what you're saying? Am I
Uh,
understanding it correctly?
Well, I mean, we're just a chat room here. I think that would require some devoted, dedicated actions. But yeah,
Yeah.
the original idea was to lead the conversation as we're doing, and then
Mm-hmm,
hopefully, if there's the appetite for it, have breakout
mm-hmm,
sessions or breakout groups to attack these in detail and provide guidance to the industry
mm-hmm.
as to how to handle them. Andrew, did I miss? I might have missed Andrew. Were you out there, buddy?
Or hold on. And thanks, David. I appreciate that. So, look, number two is all I do, right? That is my expertise, and it I don't think that we understand in this larger ecosystem of HR how big and how wide number two is. We're talking not a few. I mean, I've been following Workday on a week-to-week basis for well over a year. Okay, no biggie, right? And the Sirius is another one that popped up. But I don't think that people understand what's happening in South Korea, the African Union, Australia, Singapore, Brazil, Argentina, Peru, any number of cities, counties, states here in the United States, all of Canada, the European Union. I can go on and on. And it is a full-time job just keeping up with it. And then on top of that, let's all admit that our data isn't as clean and awesome as it probably needs to be. So when I go into an organization and look at this, I'm saying, okay, first of all, I know exactly where you post and all that before I even walk in the door because it's all public information. But your data is so bad that if you were to try to address this, you wouldn't even know where to start. And if you got audited or regulated, you're just going to get caught. And so when we talk about the expertise on this, I agree that we need to have awareness, but we need to start with being real data experts and knowing that we have to make all the decisions there. And if we don't get our stuff cleaned up, then number two really hurts because you don't know where you're going to get slapped from.
Blair, go.
Yeah, no, great point, Andrew. I've
Uh,
been trying to connect with you on LinkedIn, by the way, so open it up. I don't have your email. Um, uh, so dichotomy central, right? AI is great. I could build my resume. I can apply to 1,000 jobs. I could potentially, if I were a new player in the market who maybe just sold my CRM to a large other ATS player, write my API documentation via ChatGPT as potentially a company like JobSync works to do our thing with said new potential ATS with a big client. Like literally riddled. So we're coming out with the question of like, how much of this resume is you? How much of this resume is what you tried to pair to the job? How much of this resume is just bullshit coming from AI? I want a watermark. I want to see that it's 10% Dave and 80% AI and 5% a consultant. And I want to see which order that happened, right? Because, like, yeah, if you can give me 90% there and I add the last 10, okay, great. I know you put your brain on it, right? If you put 10% of your brain up front and then the AI fix the rest, that may be not as good, right? So we're seeing this huge can I believe it factor we're being asked to we're seeing all these bots coming in to ATSs. We have figured out a way through IP address and, seeing the different formats of different AI models and say, this one was built by X and flag it. Now, the original source says LinkedIn. Sure, we'll say LinkedIn, but we'll say probably 90% bot, right? So this is a big, big problem that recruiters, the company, like, I like that you can use AI and be more efficient, but how much of that is Blair's brain versus crowdsourcing?
Great take. Great take. Helen, that sounds like a pitch for Selfie. Great stuff. All right. Obviously, the net of all this is disruption. Blair, and fantastic. I mean, so true, so spot on, and so key that we're the masters of that data. Talent acquisition owns that data, owns that process, owns that audit layer, whatever it is, that we own it. And this is just great stuff. Obviously, there's massive instability. That's going to continue. There's going to be massive disruption. There's people on this call that are going to do some of the disrupting, which I think is good. It's very good for our profession that we're doing, that we disrupt ourselves from time to time. So, all right. Anything else on this? All right. So these are our big these are our big kind of like TATL wrapped lessons learned from our take, and these are from people that have weighed in. Like the first one from Britt Murray, obviously, you should have settled the lawsuit. Like a lot of this can't. I mean, a lawsuit was going to come. It was just a matter of time. But that particular one, it probably should have been settled. Oops. And she reaffirmed that in both the calls that she was with us. That boy, they should have made that go away with a check, and they just didn't do it. Blair, go ahead.
Sorry. We were at both Workday Rising San Fran and Workday Rising Barcelona, and very frequently asked the question about that. And it's like every Workday user is moon blinked. They're like, oh, Workday, right? Like they're just moving forward.
Yeah.
Like, no, they have access to your data. We talk to people who are in the lawsuit, named. Like, yeah, we're named.
Are they not concerned,
I
Blair?
have to go in through global.
Marching forward.
Yeah.
Well, clients, yeah, and a lot of clients haven't been concerned. You're absolutely right, Blair. We also see with Workday the data breach that they had, and then they hid from being Google searched, so they can say, "Yep, we posted about the breach on our site," but no one can actually find it. So they can check the box on that. These activities are going to happen, and organizations, and especially at some point the CFO. They're going to really need to understand and have an opinion of this. I do think, looking at these, lessons learned of 2025, this is this great opportunity for the TA leaders to really get more involved, to not just focus on the transactional actions. Let's automate wherever we can and focus on the more strategic ones, really understand that business, what's going on with the business, being arm in arm with the right people, and then drive these projects, drive these initiatives. So I really think 2026 is going to be so much more positive, and I'm really excited about it. But you have to do these things to get to the good part.
Yeah, and the data just keeps reemerging as a key opportunity. BLS data is a mess, or something's a mess. I don't know whether the government shut down or our president. I don't know does anyone really even know what's happening with the BL? We used to count on this stuff like every first Friday of the month, every Thursday. We lived our lives around this data, and it's suspect. It was suspect prior. Person got fired, and it's never kind of come back as a bellwether data point. I'm sure it'll get restored in 2026, but will we have the confidence in it? This was our bedrock data point. The economy's doing X because the unemployment is at 4.4. And are we rattled? I think we might be. AI is ready, but like so many of you have said, Jim Durbin, is it ready? Is it doing what they're saying it's actually doing? And is it the real rationale? Something that's been on my mind is and not just mine, but is it just air cover for actions that would have been taken anyway through an economic cycle? They hired too many people in 2022, 23. But AI drives multipliers, right? If you say I'm reallocating, if you're Microsoft, we're reallocating poor performance revenue away from employees that are not adding value to building out our AI stack, that drives share value, right? So you wonder, you just kind of wonder. Um, our world is getting reimagined. And this is the key to me. The conversation that we have to have all next year is how is it getting reimagined? What are we? What do we do for a living? And I've been saying, I think my take is we need to move way upstream. Like we've always picked up the transaction once a rec's approved, or at best, strategically, a quarterly workforce plan, if that's even happening anymore, gets executed and we respond to it. I think we need to get way back up in product development. Where is this company going? What is the labor and the talent and the tasks and the work needed to execute the strategy?
I mean,
And
that's
I
been something we've talked about for years, David, but think about this for a second. We need to get smarter. Yes, more legal, more tech, more finance. All very true. We should have. But if any of the AI stuff is getting better, the fact that it might not fix all of our problems today doesn't mean that it can't be. And a lot of the problems are process integration, humans saying no, AI doing things it never should have done. So it's part of it is reimagining our workflows. But let's say you do get really good, right? Let's say a sourcing tool is out there that pulls a bunch of names and puts things in front of it. Why would I work for any of you people if I'm good enough to? I mean, this is a serious question you should be asking. If you can actually make super employees, why would any of us ever take a salary from a CEO again when the AI makes it so well that I could sell trash valets? I could do recruiting on my own. I could do all the service industry stuff that people are out there, the skilled trades. If this stuff is good, it's reimagining what we do and what competent people do with high agency. It's not about just putting bodies into a seat for a corporation to make claims about their stocks. That's how big of a change it is. So it's not just fixing the stuff we should have fixed 20 years ago. What does the world actually look like? And why would any of you, if you're any good at this, take money from a company when you can make it on your own? If AI does it on its own, why do you need a company? Why do you need a CEO or managers?
Great questions. And I think that's, if I had to look at a crystal ball, we're going to have companies with very few employees that are startups that avail themselves of all the technology and launch their own enterprise without any employees. I mean, I think that's one of the central questions. And we're not going to answer it here.
McKinsey, was it McKinsey? Someone talked about that. So it's McKinsey model, the financialization of stuff. McKinsey will walk to a big place in New York with a doorman and say, the job of the doorman is to open the door and shut the door. So we can do that cheaper. We've got an automated door system. We've got some cameras, and you're going to save 40 grand a year over the course of the next 3 years after it's all amortized. But that's not the point of a doorman.
Yeah.
It's not opening the door and the shutting the door. It's providing a sense of community. It's a sense of status in place. It's making people feel like they're supposed to be there. It's dealing with those issues. So a lot of the stuff they talk about, the jobs we're doing, they forget the glue. I mean, yeah, so you can make a bunch of money on it, but that's the old scaling problem. Oh, I've got 3 clients paying me 10 grand a month. If I get to 6, why, that's 60 grand a month. Like there's no friction to adding 3 more clients, right? That's what scares me, is that people make those assumptions and they don't realize, what do humans actually do?
That's so true.
I don't think that's right. We need to get back to training humans, because that's the one thing AI is not going to beat us there. But we have to understand how we're sold. That's a challenge.
Right on.
Understanding the business. Yeah.
Exactly.
What you're saying, and David, I acknowledge that as well, but talent acquisition has been in the habit of working with primarily people who will never work for the company. Period. The vast majority of any interaction and transactions are with people who will never work for the manager or the manager's manager, and the likelihood that someone you talk with today coming into the organization a year from now, the data doesn't support that at all. So when I hear things like talent acquisition needs to do more or understand more about how to help the business and everything else, there's no workforce planning training that is happening that I'm aware of as a standard. If I'm a head of talent acquisition, that there are goals and objectives about training on workforce planning for recruitment.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people on the call do that? You have a course, you have a series of actions where everybody on your recruitment team understands workforce demand, capacity, knowledge, skills, abilities, and tasks in terms of creating workflow, understanding workforce analytics. I mean, if you do, awesome, please speak up. But that is not what I see when I go into companies. It's sourcing, branding.
That's
It's
right.
about close,
Preach it.
right?
And
But
that's
guess
what
what?
David's trying to address, Andrew. He's trying to say that this is this opportunity for TA to spread wings and stretch out into other areas that, when is TA involved with workforce planning? When are they involved with the CFO? When are they involved with other business leaders that, hey, we may pivot here and there? When is TA involved with succession planning or key learning or performance and those kind of things? This is an opportunity to expand beyond just the transactional, let's have our blinders on piece. And that's where I get really excited, because David has some of these ideas and visions and all this, and I want to figure out how we execute. And this is, how we work, and I get really fired up about it. I just want to pivot over to Jeff Taylor, because he had some thoughts here, and I saw some of this in the chat and thought it would be great for him to speak up for a bit.
First of all, happy holidays, everybody. I think we sometimes forget to have a little gratitude for one another, and I have such gratitude for this group and for David and Frank and Jeff. You guys have been so awesome with me this year, so thank you. I just have a couple thoughts. One is, I think as supply continues to outpace demand, almost everything is going to focus on that. And we really haven't talked about that enough. Add another million people looking for jobs, and almost everything starts melting down. And I think you guys know I'm doing this podcast for job seekers. And it's just a gift to try to be human. And I'm just hearing these just horrible stories about people being out of work for 10 months, 12 months, 15 months. I met one of our own at a Acquire ROI event in Boston, completely broken, 15 months out of work as a lead TA, great experience. And I'm worried about what I call the fat middle, and we're all in that. Not We may have a fat middle as well, but we're all in this middle area. And I think if you look at outsourcing right now and what's happening in India, because of AI, the first people that are losing their jobs are middle management, and in droves, in kind of 100,000 type numbers. And I think we can look to tense areas like that and say, okay, if that starts to come to the States, what will happen? And I think we'll see something that's very similar. I think I had maybe one of my controversial moments, David, with you and others on this call, where I said we have to stop bitching about the headlines. Like, we have to actually start looking at how our industry, and Arena, I really appreciate your comment about how we need to reinvent ourselves. And I think we should start having teams, sort of like you guys have been helping me. I think we should start having teams of TAs that are saying, okay, let's reinvent our business. Let's make a pie chart of all the things we do, and just admit that 40% of these things are going to be done by AI. And so let's lean into the other 60%, and let's go be awesome at those things. And let's be talking about the change, because in our organizations, that will make us valuable. And I think that's one of the things I would say.
Right.
Couple, if this is okay, I have 5 full-time full stack developers. About 2 months ago, I asked them, are you using vibe coding? Are you using Cursor or Windsurf in these companies? And so there was a lot of mumbling and kind of uncomfortable nature, and that everyone said yes. And so about 5 weeks ago, I said, I'm going to ask the question differently. I'm going to fire you if you're not using your code buddies, and I want to know what percentage of your time is spent using them. And what came out is 90 to 95% of all the code is now being written. They use Warp. A few use Claude Code. A few use Cursor, but Warp is the most popular one. So just think about this for a second, okay? So my little team, 95% of their coding is now being done by these vibe coding tools. And so think about that. They're between 5 and 8 times more productive. Right. So just think about that as an industry right now, that our industry our tech industry in this country is vibe coding like a motherfucker. Right? And so as a result, that what we're seeing is softness in that engineering hiring, technical hiring, and it's because of AI. And the more time we spend saying it's not having any impact, it's a great example of where it's having huge impact in terms of where we are. Just a couple more. H-1B visa costs $100,000 to bring somebody on an H-1B visa now. That is going to change the composition of hiring, and maybe it's complementary to the vibe coding thing that's happening. So you won't need as many people, but that's going to hurt the world talent movement, and the world talent movement hurts all of us too. Like just that's sort of the reality. I think the only other thing I would say is that the layoffs of the big companies give every company permission to lay off right now. And I think I wrote in the chat, I think it's like a trending thing. It's cool, right? Lay off for efficiency, and then hire in more focused ways in the disruption areas, right? And that companies are being rewarded for that. Their stock is going up. But the second order consequence of that is there's just people out of work that are really going to struggle to get jobs. So I think the second order consequence of that is you can't really have job openings out in the marketplace when you're laying off 3,000 people because it's bad form. And so for the brand of the companies, I think 2026 by mid-year, we're going to be talking about quiet hiring. What are the best tools that you can use to do quiet hiring in your organizations? And it's going to be rifle target hiring around a lot of these AI skills and things. And but it's going to change how we work, right? It's going to change the databases we're looking in. It's going to change the tools we use. My soliloquy here, my manifesto is that job postings are really in trouble right now. 1,000 people in the queue. People don't need more applicants. They need better quality applicants, right? And that also will play to quiet hiring. So I don't know. Those are some of my thoughts.
Great stuff, Jeff. Thank you as always. All right, we're going to race towards the finish line on that. We had some great guests this year. Jeff, you were one of them. Thank you, sir. And we look forward to. I think you're popping in at Feb. I think and we're trying to organize that. We'll get you to give us a full update. You got to be getting close to going live with something. Yeah, I figured. So we're jacked about that. We'll have you in. Britt Marie crushed it for us. Chad kicked us off. He was so much fun, and we got going. We got our kind of sea legs with Chad, and then Andrew Flowers, who I'll plug in a minute, is coming back in Jan. He crushed it in Q1 for us. Gave us a real good sneak peek, and so thank you to all great guests. We look forward to having more next year. And of course, the Coffee on Us winners. Mussman's here. I saw Mussman out there. Jim, of course, you got us for a coffee. I think just a fun little thing. Like there's one of those like let's have fun. To Jeff, kind of just always been your point, Jeff. Is let's have fun what we're doing. Yes, it's stressful. Yes,
find the joy in it.
Find the joy, man, or do something else for a living. Right. If you're going to be part of this group, and I think you're right. I think we have harped a little bit on the negative because it's newsworthy. News is typically negative. So, we glommed onto reporting the news, and it's time. And you've maybe noticed it. We're pivoting back towards, okay, the future. What do we do? How do we react to all this? And how do we lead it? How do we drive it? How do we own it? How do we become SMEs in it? And, but anyway, there's your coffee winners. And we had a great panel. And I've got to know these people a little bit, and we'll probably do another one of these next year. HR leaders came in and just shared their wisdom with us. It was just a wonderful session. We'll probably do that again next year. So thank you, Deb, Tamika, Janai, and Nicole.